What's up, everybody? It's Nisha, and welcome back to another episode of Laughing and Crying. This podcast explores both the beautiful and the painful experiences that relationships can bring. And yes, that even means the relationships we have with ourselves. If you're new, welcome. I'm excited you're here. And for everyone else, what's up, podcast land? Welcome back, and thanks for being my people. On today's episode, we're going to start out with, did you hear about? And then have a conversation on gaslighting. Man, some of these topics on this podcast is getting deep, and it's hitting places in my heart that I didn't know I was going to hit. And I'm just letting you guys know that I'm being vulnerable for you, only for you. No, that's a lie. I'm being vulnerable for myself, but I'm opening myself up to you, which is another level of vulnerability. So I hope you appreciate all the content I'm putting out as far as the podcast are concerned. Let me let you know that I am really starting to love this segment, but I am in no way claiming to bring you the news. Like, a lot of times in this segment of Did You Hear About, is stuff like I'm literally asking, like, did you hear about? Because you could have heard about it, because it's probably not new news, okay? So if I'm talking about stuff that's old, like, let it be known that I know that it's old. Or by the time the podcast is released, you know, it's old because I recorded it a while ago, okay? However, I still love this segment because sometimes there are just things to be educated on by other people's experiences. And that's kind of what the entirety of my podcast is about, you know? So today I'm going to talk about, if you didn't hear about it, spoiler alert, if you like this TV show, it's called Love is Blind. They meet people in pods, which means they never see them, but they talk to them through a wall. They propose to one another at some point, if they ever get to that point. Then they see each other face to face, because the whole point of the show is to figure out whether or not love is blind, like whether or not you can fall in love with someone or feel like you can fall in love with someone before even meeting them in person or seeing them. And I'm talking about Raven and SK. Raven and SK were the it couple pretty much on this newest season. They didn't really have much drama. Okay, so they got to the point where SK proposed, Raven said yes, and then they have, I think, 6 weeks to kind of live together, and then they get to the altar, and then at the altar they have to decide whether or not they want to actually say I do, or whether or not they say I don't. Anyway, back to Raven and SK. Raven and SK got to the altar. SK said no. Raven was caught off guard because I don't think she realized he was going to say no. But afterwards, they stayed in communication. They kept dating. He had to go to school in a different state. But they decided that their relationship, the connection was strong enough that they wanted to keep trying and figure out whether or not it would go somewhere, right? And they were pretty deep in it. So just to give you some background, if you haven't Googled it already, Raven is a Black woman. She's on the lighter side of things. She's into Pilates, so she's very physically fit, all that just for kind of theater of the mind. SK is Nigerian. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's Nigerian authentically. His family is from Nigeria. He's very deeply rooted in the culture. His father had multiple wives because, according to him, that's something that's common in that culture. Don't take it from me. I'm quoting him. Okay, so he says that he never wanted to have multiple wives. He wanted to have one wife. He never really got on board with that. And he felt in dating that a lot of people discriminated against him according to his culture and his skin color and all of those type of things. And so he was just really, really nervous on the show because his Love is Blind that he was going to run into the same thing. Well, he did it. Raven fell in love with him. So after all that, found out SK was actually messing around with all these other women. His ex multiple times, some other woman he met on Hinge. And I heard Raven's story today. And so it got me so fired up because Raven was just talking about how she trusted him so much and they were long distance. And all of this stuff was coming out on social media because, you know, people like clout. And so these women were posting on TikTok the pictures and the receipts and all of these things from their relationships or from when he was, you know, messing around or whatever, sending these women the same photos and the same commentary that he sent Raven, like almost to like copy and paste exact, like, you know, hey baby, I was over here at this place, look at this picture I took, look at the selfie I took. And that he took his ex to Europe and he took his ex to Mexico, basically while they were still both figuring things out and actually like solid in a relationship together. And so Raven's side of the story is that like she kept excusing some of this stuff because she's like, well, we're not officially together. You know, she was just kind of walking us through how she was gaslit, essentially. She was just walking us through why her mind kind of rationalized certain things at certain points, which hearing her side, it makes sense. When you trust somebody to that degree, you're like, oh, you know, I don't have to worry about this. I don't have to think about this. Of course, I'm going to rationalize this away. Why wouldn't I? I love this person. I don't think this person would lie to me. Y'all, he was lying. He was lying all up and down and around. It fired me up so much. And she was asked this question at some point in the interview, which was, after going through this experience, do you feel like you have to put your guards up further? Because you were completely gaslit, taken for a ride. This guy was lying through his teeth. You know, do you feel like you have to put your guards up further? Or do you feel like that this is just the risk that you take when trying to find love and there's nothing you can really do about it? And what she said in response, which is what it really inspired me to share this today, is she said she found herself wanting to be more vulnerable going into her next situation as opposed to less vulnerable, because she realized that that's the only way to find out if it's really something. Like, it's the only way to be authentic. Going through this experience and being as vulnerable as she was really opened her eyes as to why it's so important to be that way and to show up as your full self. Because at the end of the day, although people may call her stupid or silly for not, quote, seeing the signs or everything like that, like, we watched it full on TV, and, you know, they both seemed like great people. Not to say that he's not, but he just made some really silly decisions and choices. People might have what they want to say about her, but really it's him who looks sketch. It's really him who looks shady, because he wasn't going in it vulnerably. Like, she opened the space for him to be able to even share. Like, she said multiple times, like, she told him, like, hey, just tell me the truth. Like, I don't want to find out about this. Like, I don't want another social media attack. Just tell me the truth and we'll figure it out. And, you know, like, just tell me the truth. And he just did it. And I just really appreciated her that she said that. Like, of course, she broke up with him at this point. But the fact that her outlook and her response to the situation was, I'm going to go into my next situation being vulnerable, I just thought was like the most mature space that you could be in after something like that. Because, man, when you're lied to that capacity, it would make any person want to like close off and not be around people, let alone be in another relationship. Podcast land. In general, this human experience fires me up. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself as I'm listening to this interview. Like, I was sad for Raven. I was disappointed in SK and his family of origin that taught him that this was okay, because ultimately he was saying, hey, I don't want to be this person that has multiple wives, but this is what you were shown. You were shown how to juggle multiple women, and you got out in the world. Although your emotions, your feelings told you that you wanted one thing, your experience and what you were taught, even unconsciously taught, was to do exactly what you just did. So I don't know. I think that's why it's so important to do the work, because I've learned that there are so many things that I've wanted. Like, I don't want to handle this the way my parents did. I don't want to do whatever it may be. But until you do the work, sometimes you don't really have a conscious choice. Sometimes your body just repeats, your mind just repeats what you were shown. And that no way excuses his conscious behaviors of coming up with the lies he did and all of those kind of things. I think that gives more information to what is actually going on. And I think that a lot of times we walk around thinking that we're not going to repeat bad behaviors that we were shown throughout our childhood and our life. But until we actually do the work to dig inside of ourselves and figure out how not to do those things, we're doomed to repeat it. Like, we're doomed to repeat history. Like, that's just what it's about. So anyway, I thought I'd share that, just that inspiration from her, because it kind of leads into the conversation that I want to have today of just like, how do you come out of a situation where you feel so traumatized and let down and disappointed and just all around deceived and still walk with your heart open? Like, that's crazy to me. The conversation that I wanted to have with you guys today is on gaslighting. Don't know if you know what that is. I, in my recent, maybe the last 5 years, kind of learned what it actually was. But I'm going to give you a definition. So the definition of gaslighting is a tactic to manipulate someone using psychological methods into questioning their own sanity or powers of reasoning. So it basically is a way to kind of manipulate someone into questioning their logic or their gut. So, I mean, first up, it's just like the hardest thing, worst feeling in the world, right? To trust someone and then find out that they're not treating that honor of trust well. Because truly it is an honor when someone gives you their trust, and then when somebody misuses it, it's kind of a slap in the face, and that's terrible. So I've experienced that. And I know everyone out in podcast land has experienced that into some capacity, whether it be with a friendship, a job, coworker, spouse, relationship, whatever, partner. There's like two camps, right? Somebody reacting from their past experiences and their childhood trauma and things that they just haven't dealt with to bring them into a level of maturity. Or now that I think about it, I feel like there's only one camp, and that's the first one. That's someone reacting from their past experiences, from their trauma, and not doing the work and not dealing with whatever they need to deal with to come into a level of maturity. Because what else is there? And I think that when you're on a quest to be more in tune with what you feel, hold people accountable, being vulnerable, all that, there are literally people who will bully you because they think having emotional maturity is equal to being like weak, trying to make you feel crazy. The reason why Raven inspired me so as much as she did is because if you've ever been, like, I've been gaslit. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, I've been gaslit a lot. And I think that, like, a lot of people tell me that I lead with vulnerability, and it's kind of why I started the podcast. Now, through doing the podcast and through just living more life and growing older, I've learned how to be more vulnerable. But I think in life, generally, I've always led with vulnerability. So I think that I have been taking advantage of this a lot. Man, I think my first instinct is that people are going to be honest with me. I have gone through so many experiences where I have like just been straight lied to. I've been in scenarios where I have tried to give, like, most of mine, no, Jesus Christ. Was I supposed to talk about this? This is digging in places I don't want to be. This is digging in places I don't want to be. I mean, friendships, people like literally talking behind my back to other people at my job, telling them bad things about me, and then coming to my face saying that, of course they never said anything. Why would I think they said anything? I mean, people telling me, like, acting funny towards me, especially like in my life, men. Whew. Men? Okay, here's a situation that I just felt like completely utterly stupid. For your enjoyment, you're welcome. What? Had a guy. He did everything to show me that he was into me and liked me. And I was like completely going, this actually happened twice to me. And I'm a very personable, friendly type of person, right? So I would go into this like head first thinking like, oh, what I see is real, what I feel is real. And then have asked both of these people, hey, so, we've been flirting, we've been doing all these things. So are you into me? And have gotten a, no, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? Like twice. And when I tell you guys, that ate me up. Like, it didn't eat me up because they weren't into me, because I'm like, hey, it's the world. Like, sometimes you are, sometimes you are. I think it ate me up because it drove me crazy. It made me think that what I was seeing wasn't real. What I was feeling wasn't real. And it ate at my core. Hey, Nisha, your intuition, your gut, like that thing that you feel, your confidence in the things that you feel. Yeah, shake that. And, I believe in God. And so I believe in the Holy Spirit. And I believe that there are things that I feel that go deeper than just my conscience. And what really drives me crazy too is that I have allowed it at times to even shake that, like that deeper than gut feeling. You know what I mean? And then in another relationship, actually being cheated on, straight up, yeah, sucks, what? And thinking that, man, I can trust this person fully and have confidence in this relationship, and man, not be the case. And as I'm listening to Raven from Love is Blind talk about just her experience, and me think about all my experiences of being gaslit, of people actually making me feel crazy, whether it be people who I'm like, man, you're such a good friend to me, and then I find out that you're doing these type of things, whether it be relationships that are developing, and me thinking, man, you're really into me, and then find out, wow, for whatever reason, you don't want to tell me, but you don't have to make me feel crazy, but you do, or relationships that I'm actually in that I am starting to feel like I have to ask more questions or dig deeper because I'm getting these like gut feelings that something's not right. And then I'm made to feel crazy. And then I find out, oh, I wasn't crazy. Like there was stuff happening. And it's not the things that people are doing, because life happens, life be lifing. People do things. It's the feeling of getting sucked into being made to feel crazy. When you know deep into your gut, deep into yourself, that it's just not true. And I think that's where people miss. Like when people talk about or pass these judgments on people getting cheated on, or people getting taken for a ride by friends or coworkers, or people getting fired because somebody, whatever. I think people miss this, like, all you want to do when you're in these situations and you know that there's something's not right, all you want to do is convince yourself that you're not crazy. So sometimes when somebody else makes you feel that way, you're like, oh, they must be right. I must be tripping because I don't want to be crazy. I don't want to be the person that's saying these things when it's not true. So you allow yourself to, like, it's really hard to stand up to that feeling, and because you allow yourself to kind of go along with it, because there's something else happening in your mind that's like saying like, no, you cannot look crazy right now. And I think it's such a terrible thing to do to another person, is to make them feel like their gut or what they're thinking is somehow crazy. That's what these people who choose to cheat and who choose to lie, who choose to talk behind people's back and choose to like all that kind of stuff, they miss it, of why it goes so much deeper than the surface. And it is so hard for me to talk about this right now because I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. But I think in my process, the more I learned about being vulnerable, the more I learned about holding people accountable to the things that they do, it made me almost like regret going through the process of knowing those things. Because it feels like I don't want to be the smartest person in the room because it makes me a target. If somebody knows that I'm leading with vulnerability and I'm literally giving them an opportunity to get over on me, like I'm giving them the green light, where it's like there are people with their guards up, not to say that they won't get cheated on or whatever, but sometimes they find out a little sooner. And so they're not so much of a target because they're on guard, you know? And I think it's made me regret the process of developing my sense of vulnerability, my sense of accountability, and holding other people to their own accountability. It's made me regret it. If I'm being honest. If I'm being honest, and I am, I'm trying to be. I feel like a target. That's crazy. Do you guys feel like a target? I don't know. I don't know if it's just me. And I don't mean that to come off like arrogant, being the smartest person in the room or feeling like a target. I say that because it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking you're the weak one, thinking you're the messed up one, thinking you're the overdramatic one, or because you're being vulnerable. And it's like I hate letting my guard down because I believe when people start to see me as someone who bleeds, then I'm their dinner, you know? Isn't that what's hard about vulnerability? It's because you literally feel like somebody's dinner. Like you feel like you're about to get devoured. And I don't want to be dinner. I want to survive. But I think it was the crazy paradox of it all is that when you're vulnerable, it teaches other people to be vulnerable. And when you let your guard down, you're ultimately stronger. So as I'm listening to Raven, I hear the wisdom in what she's saying of like going through this experience of this guy ultimately getting over on her makes her want to open up more. And you're like, what the, Nisha, what are you talking about? Okay. If you haven't experienced this, I can understand your confusion. If you have experienced this with me, like, come on, have my back. Because you know what I'm talking about. It's like when you choose to, quote, be dinner, you're not actually being dinner. You win. Because when you put guards up, like I have another episode coming out with my friend Jessica, and she talks about putting guards up, and we kind of break all that down. So go listen to that episode because it'll give you more context to what I'm saying. But when you ultimately put guards up, you stop yourself from finding the things that you want in life. You stop yourself from being a blessing to someone else. You stop yourself from knowing more about you, from listening to you. Instead of being like, that's it, F that, no more guys, I'm done, closed off, whatever. She literally is like, man, I'm going to be vulnerable. And this is my vulnerability right here. That hurt. I trusted him. That's how he treated me. I gave him the opportunity to hurt me. He chose to hurt me. I had to step away from that situation. And somebody that I give that trust to is going to treat it well. And I'm like, Raven, you're dope. You're dope. You're dope because you get it far above how a lot of us, meaning me, get it. Where we're like, nah, I'm going to shut down. I'm going to close off. But here's the reality. When you meet the person who wants to do well by you, you're also closing them off. And you're shutting yourself off to real friendship, real relationship, to be able to express the things that you feel, to a spouse that wants to like truly like love you and embrace you and honor your trust. Like you're shutting yourself off to all of that because there is no partial shut off. If you shut off to one person, you shut off to everyone. But there is a reality that people will gaslight bad. And then there's this other piece of learning to trust your gut, but not allowing that to turn into resentment and bitterness, which I still haven't figured out. Like I'm still in the process of figuring out, like, how do you go through the experience of being convinced that you're crazy, but then still trust your gut in spite of that? Like, bruh, like I hope you're tracking. I know that to some degree of this, I figured it out because I've moved on. Like I've gone from the relationship with people, like I have gotten married, right? Although there have been people previous who have convinced me that guys doing all of what they did didn't mean that they were into me. And I'm like, my husband did all the same things. But I was convinced, and for so long, guys, no, for real. I know this sounds so cheesy, but for real, like for so long, I didn't know that people were into me because of people like that who gaslit me. Because I was like, oh, I'm crazy. So when people ask you to go places with them and only them, and continue to ask you to go places with them and flirt with you while you're there, that doesn't necessarily mean they're into you. Apparently, to them. When people spend every single minute, and I'm talking about like, I'm a woman who's interested in men. These are men who are interested in women. Who there is either a friendship that was based off of like sort of kind of flirting, or there was no friendship prior. So what are we doing? And these are people who end up in situationships, right? Because they're like, I don't want the commitment. I don't want to take accountability to being held to a standard of expressing my feelings or being committed or whatever the case may be, even in the slightest way. So I'm just going to keep making you feel like you're crazy, but I still want your time. Like, no. And I wasn't taught this. Like, I didn't have the like sit down talk with my mom. That's not how my childhood went. So I'm sitting over here being like, oh, when a guy flirts with me, it doesn't mean he's into me. Boom. I just started ignoring everyone. I just ignored everyone. I literally ignored everyone. Like, I was like 27, 28, bruh, before I realized that that's not a thing. I was 27, 28. And let me tell you, this is like one of the gaslighting situations that didn't impact me as negatively as some others. But literally, I was 27, 28 before I recognized that there are people out there who have been into me forever, and I ignored them on purpose for the sake of not feeling crazy. There are people from college. There are people from high school who've literally hit me up and been like, so I liked you all through high school. So I liked you all through college. When you talk about like the crazy women and the crazy men out here who are like going through people's phones and who are like freaking out, like that's not an excuse for them to like, you know, bleed onto other people who didn't do anything to them. But like, it makes sense. Like when you're made out to be crazy, gaslighting is like super serious. Why don't people talk about this enough? Do they? Am I just late? Gaslighting can be in your career with your coworkers who are smiling in your face, talking about you behind your back, trying to get you fired. Gaslighting can be friendships of people doing the same thing or whatever the case, messy, whatever, trying to make it seem they ride for you, but then when it's time to ride for you, they don't ride for you. Gaslighting can be in the cheating scenarios and even the stuff I'm talking about, not just cheating, but even just playing with your mind. And I just think that, man, to hear another human being, adult woman say, I actually am going to take from this experience to not allow this person the power over me, to change my perspective of being in another relationship. I'm going to allow this situation to propel me to be even more open, because at the end of the day, I like who I am this way. And I know it comes with hurt and pain, but it's going to only teach me to trust my gut more and to open up to the person who's willing to honor the trust when I give it to them. That's crazy. I'm learning that. And I don't know. I just wanted to put it out there as a conversation. Like, I know that this conversation doesn't necessarily like tie itself up in a bow. It doesn't lend everyone an answer or a solution. I'd love to continue this conversation on Instagram. Like I always say, at Unleash the Niche, you know, Unleash THA Niche. I'd love to finish this conversation because I just think it's such an important one to be aware of and to continue to have that, like, we have to continue to be vulnerable, not for other people's sake, but for our own. In the midst of gaslighting, in the midst of lying, in the midst of cheating. This is real, gritty relationship issues. People who are married go through these issues. People who are in long-term relationships go through these issues. People who love Jesus, love the Lord, and are married and have been married for long periods of time go through these issues. Like, this is not for crazy people. This is not for the people who, just didn't get it right. Like, you are not off limits to gaslighting. Like, there are people in life who gaslighting is their defense mechanism to whatever they're dealing with in their own experience. So anyway, PSA is out there now. Nisha talked about it now, and I'll probably do another podcast on it that does, lend to some more solutions or lend to some more practical things we can do about it. But right now, I'm just starting the conversation, and I'm just being a little vulnerable with you guys, That's all I'm doing. All right, so how you feel? I feel lighter. How do you feel? Does this make you really think about the situations that you've been through where you're like, man, I was done wrong, and how has that affected me? Because that's the point, right? Like, let's think about how it has affected us. How has that closed you off to the world, to relationships, to friendships, to your family? How has that closed you off? Because that's the work that we need to do. It's not about finding the person who's not going to gaslight you, because ultimately we're not in control of that. I think it's finding the work that we need to do to open ourselves up to the experiences we want to have. Right? Relationships are tricky, but I hope you had something to take away from this conversation. I hope you laughed some. I know it wasn't one of my funnier episodes, but I hope you laughed at least at my stuff. It was kind of deep. But make no mistake, I would love to hear what you love most about the podcast episode. And if there's a topic that you'd like me to talk about more or differently, or even just more in depth, hit me up. I love to hear that. If you think more people should listen to the show, you can help me get the podcast noticed by sending an episode to a friend, by writing a review on Apple Podcasts, by clicking that notification bell so that you get the episodes when they're released, and by continuing to share on social media. And if you yourself want to go deeper into the topics and laugh harder, join me over on Patreon. If you have podcast episode ideas, Patreon would be the place to let me know, because that's where I go for inspiration. Also on Patreon, you get the podcast early, and sometimes I throw up personal vlogs. You don't want to miss it. I'm on Instagram at Unleash the Niche, Unleash THA, Niche. And you can also find me on other platforms as also Unleash the Niche. That's UNLEASHTHANEESH. Well, that's it. I loved hanging out with you guys today. And, maybe we can impact the world or something. I'll leave you at that. Bye.